Welcome back, everybody. We're here talking today about blended families, and I think, Andrea, you and I can attest to some of at least our experiences in blended families and how that bleeds into family law. We got three great people with different perspectives, and we really want to connect with all of you out there. So thanks for listening, and Mary, kick it off.
Sure. Hey, I'm Mary Maloney. I'm a freelance writer. And of course, we have Justin Sisemore here, the leader of the gang. He's a family law attorney in Fort Worth, and Andrea Jones, entrepreneur. And Justin is also an entrepreneur as well. But we are talking about step families today, you guys. And you both have experience with that personally. So let's talk a little bit first about what your experiences are personally with step families and how you've made it work and maybe some challenges you guys seen personally.
Yeah, so Andrea and I, we met a long time ago. It started out kind of an attorney-client relationship and has evolved into, I guess, mother-son. She tells me when I'm being a bad boy and all that other stuff. But it's really interesting for me to talk to people about what blended families actually mean and how in law, specifically in family law, how they can navigate those waters. So, Andrea, I just wanted you to kind of talk about your experience, because obviously you got a whole village at your house, what that integration of those kids look like, how you navigated those waters. And then, we'll kind of touch a little bit on the legalities and then some of the do's and don'ts in just a bit. But I just wanted to kind of kick it off with your story because I think it can inspire some people, specifically single moms, divorcing moms, people that are going through a tough time. And if we can do nothing else here, that's kind of, I hope, what we're trying to accomplish is get people over that hurdle that they may think is too big.
So I'm in a blended family, have been in a blended family for over 16 years. So I got divorced. I had little kids, twins that were 2.5, and then a 8, 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. So, and then I met my husband, and and then we raised 6 kids together. So he had 4 kids, I had 4 kids. So we blended 6. And in raising six kids, I mean, step parenting is not easy. And I think looking back, there are a lot of challenges that I wish we wouldn't have gone down that path. But again, I think when we're here, we can talk about all those different things that come up. And I made a list of all the things that I thought we need to think about and touch on maybe. So first of all, step parenting is not easy. Anybody tells you out there, oh, I have kids already and I'm going to be a step parent, it's not easy. I mean, you really have to, it's easier said than be done. You're dealing with a divorce, potentially, dealing with somebody that had a divorce, or both of you. In our case, both of us had a divorce. Or you're dealing with somebody who had a death of a parent. So that by itself is traumatic. One thing I learned a long time ago is, and I think a lot of moms and dads out here need to understand that, you'll never love your stepkids the way you love your own kids. And that's my personal opinion, because I was beating myself up when I was younger, saying, like, how come I cannot love them to the same level I love my own kids? But then somebody told me you never will. If you're already a mother, you never will, which put me at ease. You can be fair, but you don't have to.
Let's talk about this list thing real quick, because I always hear people tell me that they've got a list of qualities that they have for their significant other, their spouse. First, did your background, first, did you make a list for your spouse?
No, I didn't. I wish I would have. I mean, no, but there's a list for your, I think there's a list you have to go down. For the partner, there's something you have to think about the kids.
Did you make a list about me, before you decided to start working with me all these years ago?
I'm not gonna share it. No, but I think there are certain things that a lot of people don't think about. Or looking back, I wish I would have thought about that. So we can talk about those things. Visitation schedules. We were off visitation schedule. So if you have 2 families you're blending, one might have week on, week off. The other one might have every weekend. That's something to consider. The ages of the kids. The genders of the kids. I had twin boys. We brought another boy in that was the same age into the mix. Easy. I don't know whether it would have been easy if I had twin girls and brought another girl in. Because we girls are like, this is my best friend. You can't be nobody else's best friend. So bringing another girl to the mix, is that easy or not? Do the kids get along in general? What respect do you have for the biological, or what respect do the kids have for their biological parents? There might be things there. Is your ex a high conflict ex? There's another thing they can add to the mix. Are you ready to make compromise? And I think in a blended family, there's a lot more compromise necessary than in any other family, because you kind of grow together. And here you're having 2 families. Are you ready for rejection? That was a big thing for me, because you're wiping somebody else's kid's butt and cleaning up their whatever, and then they tell you, "But you're not my mom. You can't tell me shit."
Right.
And that's what they say. Are you ready for that? Because that was hard for me. You do all that stuff for them, and then they basically throw you the middle finger and say, "You can't tell me stuff." Practice makes perfect. Nobody goes into blended family and is perfect from the beginning. Praises versus physical touch. That was a big thing too. As a mama, you give hugs. What do you do with your stepkids? Do you give hugs? Do we give hugs in public? That's a big thing.
Did you have any did you notice anything? Because I think culturally things come into play, and obviously with social media and the polarization that happens with social media, there seems to be a lot of stereotypes out there. How did you experience any stereotypes, and how did you overcome those? Because I really do feel like, I know deep down when we're behind closed doors, we can both tear up and hug each other because nobody is living this magical life that's out there on social media. But I do feel like you've got a pretty decent balance. And I watched the transition throughout the entirety of your case and representation over all of these years. You really kind of came out on top of that. How did the culture play into that, and how did you overcome a lot of those obstacles?
I think that being German, as you know especially, we are a little different, and we don't build friendships that easy. But we don't give a rat's ass what you think. We don't ask how are you, because I don't give a rat's ass unless I know you how you are. So we ask you.
How does that work with our team? When you do that?
I have learned, I have evolved, but we really more honest. And I think the physical thing was a big thing for me, because in Germany, not that we're always naked, but sexuality is more open. So you see your parents naked. You grow up in a different culture, and coming to the States, that was a big issue. And now going into a blended family, that was a big issue. Just because the way I raised my kids and the way we were around our kids is not necessarily how other people are. Like I said, my kids see me naked, have seen me naked, and I did the same thing with my parents. In the States, that's not a common thing. Still up to this day, it's not a common thing. So there's something that you have to watch out there for. You have to watch out for that too. Otherwise, I think it helped me to have a thicker skin, I think.
So you were being proactive in thinking about not only the impact for you, but also, somebody else out there. Maybe
Correct.
the stepmom, maybe the mom.
Correct.
Maybe the stepdad, the dad.
Yeah, because
you're actually thinking about those things.
I thought, because I was a mother myself, I think it's easier to be a step-parent if you already are a parent. Again, my personal opinion. Other people might say it's not, because I've already been down that road. But the dangerous thing is it's a different road. So just being a parent doesn't prepare you for being a step-parent. But I think we navigated the waters pretty good at a certain degree, but it's still not that easy.
So when you got into, and I don't want to get too private here, but that's what we're going to do. So we're going to. When we got into the court setting, I don't want to step on toes, because there are kids out there, and these things do impact kids, right? And so the private stuff that needs to come out, I'm more interested in learning. When you got to court, did you change from day one when you stepped in the office? What was your take on the entire custody situation, the divorce situation? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
For myself?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, devastation, because I was married with 4 kids in the States, 4 little kids, and now here I had to go down the path of divorce, family in Germany. So, and I was always a business professional, always out there, but it feels like somebody pulls the rug underneath your feet. And even though I did everything by myself, now all of a sudden I had to do it by myself. And for women, I think security is one of the biggest things that we as females want. And even though if you're in a marriage and he's doing his thing and you do your thing, when the final plug is pulled, or whatever you call that, when you finally pull the plug and you say that's it, it's still you fall into this big hole. And I was there. I don't think I was the best mother at all times, because you emotionally go through so much that it's hard.
So throughout the course of litigation, obviously we have generally temporary orders. We have things that happen like discovery, and you've got some stranger coming in telling you how you're going to live your life from a day to day. And then you've got a judge making decisions, and then enforcements of those decisions sometimes. So throughout that first scenario with your kids, how do you feel like you've evolved through that? And what was the court process like for you?
I think at the beginning, it was the pure fear, and then feeling that I have to defend myself all the time, and a lot of guilt, like to pull the family apart. And then I think I evolved through time in realizing this is, I never hid from my kids that I cried, because I felt like they need to see what mama is going through. So I never hid that, but I hid all the other stuff more and more from them. Anything that has to do with court, because the kids should live their happy lives and be kids, and all the other stuff has to stay away from them, which is not easy, but you have to try. And looking back, I would have done much, much more, even keeping stuff away from the kids.
And I'm presuming that when you go from, I don't presume because I know you, but when you go from court settings and you go into a situation where now, you've got a final order and you're supposed to live life. What was that? Give me that 2 to 5 year window for you. What was that like 2 to 5 years after, and how has that evolved into now getting into the blended portion of your family?
Well, it's still such a new thing because you're so used to living with somebody, and then all of a sudden you're a single mother with 4 kids, 4 little ones, just to find daycare to do your daily stuff is overwhelming. And then I think at some point you evolve. At some point you got it managed. You figure it out, and then you put yourself back out there.
What about things like, because one of the things that comes up a lot in divorce cases is who gets the right to make certain decisions, who has the right to make educational, medical decisions, what's the proximity we're going to live from each other. So how did you manage those scenarios in the blended family situation?
Well, I was the one who made all those decisions. They made it easy. But on the other side, there was not all the decisions were not made. So my husband didn't have all the decisions. So that's why I say when you blend 2 families, if I can decide everything for my kid, but my partner cannot decide everything, where do we move? Mm-hmm. You have to be in a certain. I had to stay in Tarrant County, for example, where we lived 3 streets over is not Tarrant County anymore. I couldn't buy a house there because I would have been out of Tarrant County. So things like that you have to consider too. You can't just pack up your stuff.
I don't want to stop there because how big of a deal is that geographic area? I mean, I have people call me all the time saying he's trying to trap me or she's trying to trap me. And the geo area, it seems like all I want to do is just move. How big a deal was that? How much did we talk about that?
Well, we did talk about that, but I think for me, coming from Berlin is a different story. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Berlin. Berlin had a wall around Berlin. And people always ask me, well, how can you live in a city that has a wall around it, but you never saw the wall? Because the city is so big.
Yeah.
So when you think about Tarrant County, we lived in Keller, Tarrant County. That's big enough. How often do you actually go outside of Tarrant County? Okay, Dallas-Fort Worth is a little different because you have another city there. But how often are you actually move out of the parameters of the city? How often are you going to Collin County? How often are you going to Johnson County? Your life and your stuff is pretty much in a certain area.
So what was that proximity that you all lived apart from each other? Just ballpark.
35, 40 minutes.
Okay. And did y'all ever live closer or further than that throughout the course of your kids going to junior high, college, and high school?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So with respect to the geo area, why did you feel it was important to live near or in proximity so that parents could be involved, or was that a thing?
The school thing. I mean,
did y'all discuss that behind the scenes?
No, my ex was crazy, so we didn't discuss anything. But looking back, it is important because the kids play do sports activities, school, and both parents should be involved. So if one moves away, the other one has no chance of going to a basketball game, football game, going to school activities if you're too far away.
Yeah, and I think that's massively important for people to understand is that even when you have like fundamental differences and you can't speak, just kind of burying yourself for a little bit in the blended family scenario is mission critical because you can't expect parents to both be involved, and one parent is going to therefore, generally speaking, want to assert their will. And so if you don't have that kind of dynamic where you're burying yourself, and that's one thing I talk to clients about a lot, and I was really proud of you because you're very strong-willed, type A, get after it, German or not, that's your personality. And so I just really, really was engaged with you and throughout the course of that process and was really impressed with how you did that, right? And can you acknowledge that didn't happen on day one?
Oh, no. I was a mama bear, and I wanted to make all the decisions, and I wanted to have it all my way. And then you realize, yes, even though I did everything before we got divorced, the father is vitally important in the kid's life. So the father needs to be involved, or vice versa. They need to be involved. And thinking that they don't need to be involved is so short-minded, short-sighted. They need to be. And if they're not now, because the kid might be 2, well, when they're 5, they need the daddy. Or when they're 15, they need the daddy. And the daddy or mama, vice versa, not being there has such a huge impact on the kids. So I think there's never a reason to move far away. I see a friend of mine, the child lives in Texas, the father lives in New York. how are you going to handle that? Right? This is
and I think that, circumstantially, if it's an impossibility, where somebody's in the military,
you make it work.
I try to always say, don't speculate and conclude that all or nothing with clients, but generally speaking, it's very challenging to have that dynamic. And, with you, like you saw later on in life, where the kids kind of started to drive the boat. Can you talk about like how they kind of become a wedge too when they figure out that two parents are not communicating, and what happens in a blended or co-parenting situation when two parents don't communicate?
Oh, I mean, they run all over you. They run because they go, Daddy said I can do this, and then Mommy said I can do this. And they're smart. I mean, even 3-year-olds, they're very smart. They play you so hard against each other. So you need to. And the non-talking piece, yes, you need to put yourself behind that. Because I think you want to prove, I felt like I had to prove myself that I did nothing wrong. I wasn't cheating. I didn't do anything wrong. The other side kept telling all our stories, and I felt like I have to defend myself. I don't.
Did you ever feel like your kids like would not love you as much? Or did you ever feel like the love they had for you was less because of the involvement of the other parent?
Yeah, because you think you have to keep a certain face in front of your kids, you have a certain status, and it's not true. I mean, all your actions speak all the words. You can talk all day. Kids learn by your actions. They saw me at my lowest, they saw me at my highest, and I think that's where they all got their drive from, and they understand that there's roadblocks. They're going to keep going because I didn't hit them. That was not intentional, but looking back, my kids saw me raw, like in on all levels.
Yeah.
And I think that might be bad. Psychologists might tell you don't do that. I did it because there was no other way. And I did it that way, and my kids came out fine on the other end.
And, going forward, you actually had an experience where your kids kind of wavered back and forth, even though you were the heavy lifter, right? And I had a case in court last week where this was definitely the case. And I also live this life, right? So I think people think that because you're a divorce attorney or something, you have all the answers. The reality is I think you have the answers because of experience in business or being an attorney or anything else. So the reason I bring that up is because, when a mother or a father does all the heavy lifting, as I clearly saw you to do, what was that like for you when the kids were kind of creating the wedge and going back and forth with where they wanted to live or what things they wanted to do that you may not have agreed with?
It was hurtful because I thought, like, I'm doing all the stuff, and then you go over there and I love my daddy, and my daddy is so important. I said, dude, who did all that stuff for you? Or daddy needs to be at the football game. Who paid for all the crap? Like, there was a lot of pride in what I did and the kids, but the kids don't care. The kids don't care, and kids are smart. And when I look back now, the twins are now 19, turning 20. They know exactly who did what. There's nothing to be said. The kids know exactly who did what. There's no spreadsheet necessary to show them what I did. They saw me day in, day out, take care of them, whatever. And then they saw me do whatever is needed. And they have their opinion about their dad. And I think that's one of the things I learned over the years is there's nothing you have to say about the other partner or your ex-partner. You were in a romantic relationship, now you're not anymore, but you have kids for the rest of your life together. For the rest of your life, not only until they're 18. You want to be at a wedding, hopefully, at their wedding, and you want to both be sitting there without arguing or whatever. When they have kids, you want to be at the delivery room and not sit there and argue and fight. And I'm at that point now.
Y'all actually like raised kids that can think and stuff?
Yes, but I mean, that's not something you think about when you are coming out of the heartbreak of a divorce or marriage ending or relationship. And you don't think like that. You think me, myself, and I, and those are my kids, and they're going to do what I say. No, you can't. Those are their kids, and I always feel like the kids also, even though they now have 2 households where they live at, I think for kids is 1. And the better you make that one big family, not there's 2 houses, but I'm a kid and I live in 2 different houses. But I don't have 2 homes. I have 1 home. And I'm just shifting around because I think that makes it easier for the kid. Instead of packing up all your crap and moving it to the other house and don't take those pants because I bought those pants and daddy can buy you other pants. I've been there, done that too. I've been there. Those pants were expensive and you leave them. Stupid. Like looking back, what does it matter? And if those are the kids' favorite pants, let them take it and buy some other pair. It doesn't matter. But you get there later. I don't think you get there immediately when you're out of this.
And I think you guys, we both talked on the podcast before about that you really want to be in it for that long game too. Justin, you've said that a lot. And you're saying you want to be at the weddings together and things like that. So that's important that people don't expect everything's going to be perfect right away in these situations.
No, you evolve, I think, over time. You evolve.
Yeah, I mean, I the one thing we preach from the beginning, and I can start out of the initial consult and just roll it right through temporary orders, roll it through discovery and mediation, which resolves about 90% of our cases. And the way that we talk to people about sometimes your experience without using your name, your example is an example that many people have gone through. And everyone, when they call me, they feel like they're the only person on this island that has experienced this stuff. I'm like, no, dude, I've heard narcissism 55 times today.
Exactly.
I've heard that the dad you're never going to understand him. He paints a good picture. He's going to come in there and all of a sudden wow the judges. And it's like, you lived it. We went to court quite a few times, did the whole scene. So I love the insight from hindsight for you. And I love knowing that, there are people that get through this and people hearing about how they do that. And it's not that, and we're going to listen to one podcast and have all the answers, but I do think it's important that we raise decent humans out there. And it's like, how do we do that? Well, sometimes we got to train the adults like Cesar Millan with the dogs, right? So I really enjoyed that story. So,
well, another great question or great thing for people to think about if they're getting into a blended family is, what is the person that your person that you're getting involved with, what is their relationship with their ex, who they're co-parenting with? So what can you guys say about that, and what's your experience been with that?
Yeah, that's from a legal standpoint, that's a huge issue because, obviously when you're hurting, we've talked about that before, people just kind of jump into the next relationship sometimes without really thinking about disciplinary actions and your list, like the list that you went through. A lot of those questions are very important questions to ask, and sometimes you'll get the fake answer. But from a court's perspective, it's always bio parents first with relationship with their kids. They do not want to be in a situation where, third party is stepping in and stepping on toes and changing that relationship. And you hear, well, this is your new dad. Like when I hear that, I mean, you want to see me come unglued on cross-examination in the coolest and also the meanest way.
I would love to see that.
It's fun. I mean, I dig it. That's some fun stuff. When I really
need to come
get
to court
get after somebody, like, in my job, we don't sell puppies, and it's half the time with your kids and half your money. Hey, thanks for coming to the firm, and please have a long-standing relationship. I really do want that, but the reality is you're not really selling puppies and butterflies, right, and cupcakes. So I think that the idea there, Mary, to your point, is that, or your question, is that if we can get in this mindset that the kids, the org chart is there. Mine is God, family, wife, kids, and so on and so on. So, you keep that org chart in place, and I think that really matters because kids are going to manipulate. And somebody, your ex, is going to do something stupid, say something stupid, gaslight, do all the stuff. That's going to happen. It's already happened or you wouldn't be in the office. Mm-hmm. But then when you take that a step further and you go, okay, well, we know all that. Now, how do we move forward? I think the only way to really do that is really think about this stuff. And that's why I love doing these podcasts. Like, think about what that ex is, what issues you're already having before you go jump in and get married, move in, buy a house. I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we doing that just yet? Let's ask a few of these things. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, and I think the ex plays a big role. The ex plays a big role, but it has to be, like you said, about the kids is the ex and you and not the other person. So if I bring another man into my life or my ex brings another woman into his life, the decisions are still made by the biological parents and have to be made. Behind closed doors, I can get opinions. But at the end of the day, it's my kids. And I think a lot of people mix it up, especially we're both God, and then there's the husband or the wife, and then there are the kids. And I think people make mistakes in blended family. God stays there, but then the other parent comes above the kids. And is that in your marital relationship necessary? Yes, but when it comes to your kids, don't put me in a situation to make a decision between my kids and you. Guess what? The kid's always going to win. I think that's something the step-parent has to understand too. The new step-parent can give advice, like I said, but it's not taking a role. And I hate when I see people early on, like you said, this is your new daddy. No, that's not your new daddy. And I was the same way also with my stepkids. I'm not the mother. So, and I will step back every single time the mother is present. That respect has to be there. When the mother of, and we have a great relationship, the mother of my stepkids was at any event, there was no hugging, kissing, I love you kind of thing from me to my stepkids when the mother was around. I always took a step back. I'm the stepmother. and they
Yeah,
make the
that's like
decisions.
being a decent, normal human
But
being.
a lot of people don't do that. Like
A lot.
the wife, the new wife of my ex-husband, kissing on the mouth and all the stuff in front of me. And as a mother, don't do that to me, because here comes a mama bear. You're not the mother of my kids. You're an addition. And to take over that role and trying to make decisions, and we're gonna do it this way? No, hell no.
Yeah, I mean, the courts are not stupid or oblivious to this stuff. They know when some step parent is coming in there and doing that and creating the wedge. I mean, the surefire way to get somebody out of their life is to do that kind of stuff. And I go in there and just say, "Hey, judge, we want the injunction in place, keeping
Don't
kids."
visit, huh?
Yeah, this lady doesn't get to show up for the visit. Well, good luck with that relationship. She can't come stay at your house and can't come to games and whatnot. That doesn't work out well. And it doesn't take a whole lot from the court's perspective to jump to that solution.
Do you do that often? I mean, do you?
100%. Yeah, I mean, the standard injunctions actually have a 24-hour period. So generally you'll see, a parent unrelated of the opposite sex or same sex with whom they have an intimate or dated relationship. That's actually in the standard injunction languages. And so they can't spend the night, right? And, people try to cheat that. They try to curb that. You'll
Good
see
luck
them go
with
to
kids.
hotel.
They can talk.
And it's kids.
They're gonna say, "Mommy had a girlfriend over, a boyfriend over." Yeah.
And even the nonverbal stuff, right? Like, so even if you're not the alienating parent that says, "Hey, what was going on at your dad's? Oh, she's terrible, and she's a whore and everything else," right? Which I hear daily. The reality is the nonverbal stuff. If you're just kind of lifting your eyebrows up to the kid or smiling to the child when they're telling you these stories, they're going to keep going. And, we see that turn into a whole new can of worms where they make stuff up, and then all of a sudden you feel like you got to go fire off emotion and hire the Sisemore firm to go deal with it.
Good
It's
if they
like,
put a wedge between you, yeah.
it's still he said, she said, and there's no backup corroborating information. And I'm not arrogant, but I'm very proud of what we do. I don't go into court with stupid arguments. I gotta feel it. I gotta be passionate about it. I've got to be able to cross-examine. I've got to be able to offer evidence. And so when people come in with just full of piss and vinegar and fire, it's like, hold on a minute. Let's unpack this. We don't ever represent Jesus. If we did, we'd be out of business. So never met him. Want to one day, but you ain't him. So that's kind of where we go with that.
But it's kind of good to know that the court also takes precautions there. That
they do.
When you have people, stepmoms and stepdad, overstepping their authority, that the court actually steps in.
And some judges will do it really quickly and swiftly and harshly, and other judges, it'll feel like you're watching the paint dry and you're just in this like kumbaya land. And so you really got to know your audience there too and know the evidence that you need to put forth.
Mm-hmm.
So for somebody that's listening to this and they're in a relationship and they're falling in love and whatever, but there's that ex in the situation, is there any advice you guys would give for like any ground rules that you should, discuss with your ex about how they should behave, or your new partner, how they should behave and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think one of the things I see is that it's harder in our business to mold the ex. We generally put, very tight restraints around what people can and can't do, exchange points, who gets to make what decisions. But overall, it's pretty challenging to really change that zebra stripes, which is why they're your ex, right? So the bigger picture is, even if you've got the bad ex, don't become the bad ex, right? And so from my standpoint with clients, and I hope we've bred this culture into our team, and I know that from what I've seen we have, it is very much that communication about talking to the client about how they don't step into those categories. And sometimes they don't really realize that, simple things that they're doing really do have a big impact. So from an ex standpoint and really, talking to your existing partner, I'll just give it by way of example. When you're moving in with somebody and you haven't really discussed that with your ex because you don't talk to your ex, I like to just kind of take this glass half full approach, which is, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this. I wanted to get your ideas. I call it the who, what, when, where, why. And in law, we call that the direct examination. It's amazing when you ask people direct examination questions, they actually share some stuff that y'all might not be too far apart. It's the cross-examination questions, which are the leading questions. This is how you're going to be, and this is what's going to happen. And I know you're going to do this. And the projections and conclusions that people get into and the speculation really leads down a path of, this is exactly what I remember you as. You tell me how it is. It has to be your way. There's no communication. And the reciprocation of that communication is going to be exactly the same. They're going to cut you off. They're going to call you the B word. They're going to say that you're just the controlling person that you are. And there is no communication. So I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just people put themselves in this box of, if I do this, I know what's going to happen. And I would love to say that we have that skill. I think we'd have superheroes on our chest if that's the case.
But what would you tell the new ex? I mean, not the new ex, but what would you tell the new partner, like when you move into?
I wanted to go back on that too, because like you did say that, the kids come first, and they do come first, but it's also important, if you've lived a life where, and I've seen a lot of situations where couples get together for the absolute wrong reasons. Sometimes, a child is involved before the parties even really know each other. And, you've got to remember that if you keep an org chart, the adults are the adults, the president of a company is leading the company. It's really similar in personal life. So what I try to do is talk to them about, number one, as a step parent, you need to be a cheerleader, right? There's a reason why there's a movie, Stepmoms, right? You often feel like inferior. Everything you say is not being reciprocated. And, if you take that approach as the spouse, right, going into the new relationship with the new person of, hey, the kids that come first at all costs, what ends up happening is there's a wedge in that relationship. And I think kids really need to see that stability. They need to know that the parents are in charge. If it's blended families, the blended family, they can show them signs of love. They can really create an environment that, is healthy. And maybe your last situation wasn't healthy. And that doesn't mean we need to compare and contrast every single situation with your new relationship. It doesn't need to happen that way. And I feel like, sometimes it's like, go blue team, we're the new team, and red team was the old team. And, oftentimes when you're entering those blended relationships, that's all y'all deal with. That's all you talk about is like the new versus the old. And this is the way that they did it. And this is the way that we're doing it that's so much better. And it's like, come on, man.
Same thing.
We're all humans. I can't tell you how many times people come in, both y'all, is like, their ex is like, looks the same. They're saying things that I know that the fact pattern that's in the timeline is going to be the same, but now all of a sudden they're so different.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, man. So.
No, I think you have to have some ground rules too. I think for the new person, like decisions, and really talk about that. Because I think looking back, I wish we would have done some blended family coaching. Just have a counselor to help through, because you don't really talk about all the tough topics. You're like newly in love, or you met the person and everything is great, but there are gonna be topics you need to discuss. Like you said, the cheerleader. And we had this one time, twice, I think, where all 4 step parents sat together. And that was great, because now you see, and we talked about certain things in school and everything else. And that was helpful, because the biological mother and biological father still made the decisions, but the other ones are involved were also there. And I think those ground rules are important, but not everybody does it. I think because you think it's fine when kids are 3, but then let them turn 15 and it's a whole different game. So,
and on that point, Mary, too, like Andrea brought up a good point. You're not skilled. Just because you're a good human being doesn't mean that you have skills in knowing how to deal with a blended family.
Mm-mm.
Just because you go to marriage counseling because you're having some difficulties. I mean, we've all got close friends that just recently married that go through marriage counseling. Some people feel like that's a failure point. It's like, no, you're learning a new skill set. This is a whole different language.
It's a different perspective. I think a counselor can give you a different perspective, because if they're good, they're neutral, right? They listen to both of your opinions, thoughts, whatever, and then they can say, hey, and how can we find a solution here if we ever have? And work out solutions when you have a tie, or you want to make this, do we take the phone away because they did X, or do we not take the phone away? Because otherwise you have, we can't take the phone away because mommy bought the phone.
Yeah.
Then you kind of run into those situations, and that's not a fun situation to have. And then the kid's going to play you. So I think
to that point too, like that's why I love those consults that happen before they enter into just going down the path of custody and divorce. I mean, I think people have this misconception that really good lawyers are just blood-sucking vultures, because that's what you hear about. Like, no. I think great lawyers really do want to impact kids in a positive way. I think they want to help their clients grow their business, make some money, and then, have an impact. I mean, I think that's every business. And so the consult piece and, the counselor piece, and knowing who to call, what counselors are good with older kids, younger kids, blended families, cultures. I mean, those things all matter. Mm-hmm. And so I love that aspect of the business where I get to do that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you're bringing two families together. So we have two different parents, two different sets of kids. There's two different types of discipline, parenting styles, and things like that. So what kind of conversations should this new couple be having to set themselves up for success?
Well, that goes back to what Andrea just said. I can tell you, I'm at that stage of life where we're kind of entering that second marriage portal, right? And so I see a lot of blended families on a personal level. I grew up in a blended family, still living in a blended family, obviously. We have like 18 Christmases, so the movie Four Christmases is now 18 because we got it on both sides. And my wife's family has done a very good job of it. Every person's circumstances are different. My mom grew up as a single mom. Things weren't easy for her. And some of the things that happened were not good. And she persevered through that. My sister and I both have different kind of outlooks on life to a degree. We probably, if you uncover it and unpack it, we probably have a lot of the same weaknesses, a lot of the same insecurities. How we deal with that may be a little bit different, but it's helped mold me in a big way, right? So I don't ever look back on anybody's life and say, oh my gosh, you didn't come from this little Mary Poppins perfect little situation. In fact, I like people that have grit. I work with people that have grit, and I deal with people on a daily basis that do, and oftentimes grit is formed by these tough circumstances. So from a standpoint of, where do we go? How do we teach? How do we deal with these situations going forward? I mean, this is not rocket science. You've got to have the reps. You've got to screw up. You've got to fall. You can't project. You can't just expect your lawyer to go in and cook someone's goat and change your world. It's not going to happen. You're going to be disgruntled. Candidly, the court system is not designed to help parent your kids. It's to really protect kids and, to really get them out of the middle of these situations. And, I think people view it as, well, I just can't. I hear all the time, my kid really wants to talk to the judge. My kid really wants to talk to the judge. I'm like, why? What did you do? What kid on this planet wants to go talk to a judge other than maybe it's Judge Day and I want to see what it's like to be a judge? So
I think what we did well is when we started dating, we dated and then we made it very clear that now we have to put the kids together and see whether the kids get along. Not that the kids run the whole thing, but I thought because we had so many kids, it was important to see can they even get along. Because if they didn't, 6 kids, 8 kids total, but 6 kids living potentially together, if they didn't get along to a certain degree, I don't think our marriage would have had a chance. It didn't, and we did that, and it worked well. And now, whatever.
How long before you introduced them? Like
6 months, 8 months, something like that.
So you took time.
We took time, yeah, because we first of all, I wanted to make sure, because I said I'm never going to get married again. So I wanted to make sure that this is the right person for me, first of all. But it's a package deal. I have 4 kids. He has 4 kids, 6 together. So we had to make sure that the kids get along, and we did, and they got along. And when you look back now, I think my stepdaughter is more like me than any of my daughters. Sometimes the way she says and acts. And you would not, when we walk down the street, you wouldn't be able to tell this is her stepdaughter. I don't call him step, I say I'm bonus child, but this is a bonus child and this is the real one, because they all got along well. Again, you don't love them the same. You have to accept that, but you can be fair. And I think I was fair the entire time. And we raised 6 amazing kids in this house. But we had challenges, of course. And
what was like your biggest one in your mind? Like, as far as, did you get the whole, well, I can't discipline, I can't do anything?
Yeah, I did that because the good thing was they were very close. So my stepkids, my bonus kids came every other week. My kids were there every other weekend. So we were on and off. So we were not there at the same time because my husband had a good relationship with his ex. They made all the decisions, which is good. But to a certain degree, the new stepdad and I felt left out because they made the decisions without including us many times. And that's not good either. At least say, hey, we had a conversation. This is what's best for my daughter, best for my son. This is the path we want to go. I have no say so on the step. That's okay. But I was blindsided many times.
Did y'all ever have like a fundamental, like large scale disagreement? Like where it was kind of
punishing the kids, for example, because I always felt there's a different level. My kids got punished by him much stronger than his kids got ever punished by me, and I was not allowed to.
How'd you get past that?
I didn't. I mean, that was a big.
Sorry, guys.
that was a big argument because,
Yeah.
and I think if we did start and had the ground rules established earlier, it would have been easy. But it kind of like the decision was made once without us, the other stepdad and me involved, and the decision was made again and again and again. So it became status quo, and we just had to live with it, which was not cool. And the kids even, at some point, my stepson even said like, oh, I don't get punished at all. I can do whatever I want to do in this house. While my sons felt that.
But y'all had like a fundamental blow-up disagreement, but you still were able to come back together on other fronts.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So like if there are moments, I think that's a good message to send too. Like you may have one thing that really is the big deal, but it's not make or break the entire relationship because you got to do it anyway. Right.
For the kids' sake. And I think even especially in a second marriage or third marriage, when you blend kids together, they are so desperate now that this works because they're already torn from the first one. So I think you got to think, and I think that's another thing, when you enter another marriage or relationship with kids involved, you got to be sure this is not jumping ships like, oh, let's do this for 2 years and then jump again and jump again. I personally think you shouldn't be introduced to kids early on. I see people make that mistake all the time. Rebound girlfriend, rebound boyfriend, immediately introduced, and then the kids are totally thrown off. Mommy has the 6th boyfriend now, daddy has the 8th girlfriend. Like, what is that? That's not good for kids. And if you enter it, I think you need to be, as a person, I had to be sure, do I really want to, is this the person I want to be with, and do I take the package deal of having kids involved?
And Mary, just from the lawyer standpoint, when I hear a client call for their consult and their girlfriend, boyfriend, baby mama, step husband, step kid, whatever, that when the third party wants to get on the phone and tell me what's going on and how the rubber meets the road, I generally want to shy away from that client relationship. So I think that's important for people to hear because that's a very difficult thing to untrain. It's been grained in. A lot of times what you'll have is somebody that really doesn't take a lot of interest in any of these things. And so they end up kind of going towards that type A personality again, and they'll usually kind of recluse. And then all of a sudden, these people are supposed to go into court, right, and testify and say what's happening, but they couldn't even do it in the consult because they're not worthy according to the new step parent.
Right.
So it's
right.
like, whoa. So,
good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. So, okay, any other good conversations to have? So it's like if you want to do something advanced, do kind of figure things out ahead of time. We talked a little bit about discipline and be kind of good to get on the same page about that. Knowing what your new partner's relationship is like with their ex. And another thing is how, talking about how each of you deals with conflict and challenges and stuff like that that's happened in the past. So anything that you guys can add on that?
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, the big three in our world is generally corporate or corporal punishment. It's whether they get to use their car and what happens with their cell phone, and kind of where they get to go, I guess, a big four. And so the biggest thing that I try to get people and the courts try to get people, and I hope other lawyers believe in this, is I don't care what the page is, let's have a foundational page. Like if this child does this, this is going to be how we deal with that. Obviously, there's a lot of disagreements about corporal punishment. It's a big issue, big topic, and I think when you're the step parent, you have to tread, when I say lightly, I mean razor thin lightly. You cannot step into that category because that's a very, very quick way to have courts get you out of the equation. By the same token, you got to be able to have discipline. So if one parent is buying the other kid or buying the kid a cell phone, I've seen kids, like they have Go phones, like 2 phones. They have a car. I had a case last week. Car gets parked in the garage. Dad tries to claim on the stand that it's not kid's car. Kid goes 130 miles an hour in that car, wrecks the car, then pops the tires and wants mom to help pay for the tires. That's last week, okay?
Yeah.
So court setting, do you recall under oath, just rolling through the questions, and you really want to co-parent with this woman? Yes, and you're just this great human after you've called her the C word, the see you next Tuesday word, the B word, and everything else, right? And obviously we laid that out and slow played that so you could get a little bit of drama. But from the standpoint of the vehicle, everyone sees your true colors. And when you're being an idiot, like it's so much easier to pull that out. And there's no question why judges are smart enough to see this stuff. They know within 5 or 6 questions, just like I do in consults, kind of where this thing is going. We'll fill in some details, but the broad strokes are already there. So I just think it's very important to not try to step in there and don't try to step on toes if you're the step parent. If you're coming into the relationship, have communication, go to counselor, talk to a lawyer. It's no big deal. You're going to pay a little bit. If you've got a good lawyer, you're going to pay for a consult. Pay for a quick consult, see what the pitfalls are, figure it out, and then talk about those issues before you introduce the kids, before you move in, before you go buy the house, the car, all that stuff. Just slow down a little bit.
Yeah, take a breath.
No.
So we talked about a lot of different things that these families can do to set up a good foundations for success. I think, and seeing a professional is a great place to go. The other thing I think is good to talk about is how you handle your finances. And a lot of people go into relationships and they don't, whether it's a step family or not. That can bring up a lot of problems. So
yeah,
how should that conversation go?
The big thing that gets hard too when you have blended families and you're taking time, a lot of people don't have the resources to have dual households, right? We represent some of the wealthiest people down to some of the poorest people. Most of the case and fact pattern is actually pretty similar. You just have a few more things to divide, or maybe you have a little bit different time schedule and whatnot based on work schedules. People have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, work nights, all that. But financially, I think the biggest piece is figuring out, what are we going to give? What are we going to provide for the kids, and when are we going to provide it? Are we doing it out of spite? Are we buying them things out of spite? Are we reinforcing their positive behaviors? And that's where these parental alienation things come into play. Because I always fast forward to what happens if you get to court, and I think most people kind of want to know what happens when you get to court because that's the salty stuff. But it's like, if you are automatically going into a relationship and you have not discussed finances, you haven't discussed what your dual household looks like because you have 2 residences, right? Those expenses become the catalyst of larger scale fights. And when you buy things for kids for the wrong reasons, it's manipulation. It comes into a courtroom as manipulation. And, that happened to me as a kid. All of a sudden I've got new shirts and a little motorcycle and all this other stuff that I shouldn't have been really driving. But when you're 12 years old, that's the coolest damn thing in the world, right? And so, well, hey, now all of a sudden, person who's buying this for you, parent who's buying for you is getting that reinforcement, and mama's not feeling the love. And so she starts holding on to you like she's riding a bull in a china cabinet, and breaking all the glass. And so you've got to be vocal about that, and don't wait to act on those. Don't wait till it becomes some big war, walk into a divorce attorney or a custody attorney and expect them to, mend all these pieces. If you're having those issues, show good signs of communication and try to heal it as it's coming up. Don't talk at, be open, ask the who, what, when, where, why questions. You can use our family wizard. You can use text messages. You can establish your little text chain so you can have all the great evidence you're going to show me. But the reality is, financial piece of this is not, it's so family specific. There's not a clear-cut way to do it. And so I think you just have to be very transparent for what that's going to look like.
I mean, yeah, that's the stuff you buy the kids. But I think the other thing in my situation, it's we're crossing that bridge now. If you're in a blended family, God forbid something happens to you and your partner, what happens with all the stuff that you have together? Well, married or not married, what happens if you have an inheritance? In my case, there's an inheritance. My parents passed. I'm in a blended family. What if something happens to me? Where does that go? Mm-hmm. I think that's what people don't really think about. They don't think about it during marriage because you think, oh, we have an inheritance, no big deal. God forbid something happens down the road. I think that's a topic for another podcast to really talk about stuff like that. Yeah. Because most people nowadays, baby boomers, parents get older, you don't think about that stuff.
For sure.
And if you're in a second marriage or third marriage and you have a blended family, I think that topic becomes even more because maybe your bonus children never met your parents. But then something happens to you. What happens to the inheritance? Is it all of a sudden theirs now too?
Or you get the 20-year-old that rolls in with the 60-year-old daddy, and all of a sudden you got kids and they don't. And what happens to all his stuff if something happens? And
Correct.
That is a big wedge. I dealt with that issue last week.
Yeah.
So I think that's a topic by itself. But I think you need to set yourself up and be clear also about what's going to happen down the road. Blended family now is fine. Our kids are little, but what happens? And in college, I mean, all the financial stuff too. The divorce decree is one thing when you come out of a marriage. But now if you're in a blended family and the kids are underage, they go to college. Who's paying for college? That's normally not in a divorce decree. I mean, sometimes I guess it's in there. And mine didn't have it in there. So who's paying for college? Is there a new daddy or new mommy going to pick up the check? Are you even paying for college? Do they get student loans? I mean, that's what I'm saying. You have to be in a fairly decent relationship with the father or mother of your kids for the rest of your life, because
Yeah,
it's
I
more
think
beyond
on
than
that,
18, right?
just like you said, I mean, being proactive is very hard for people when they're in lust or what they think is love, and sometimes it's both. But being proactive and thinking about, I mean, I get the conversation, well, we're getting married in 2 months. I really need this prenup, and I tell people, like, first of all, don't wait till the month before to go do that. And to tailspin.
You might not get married.
Yeah, just hold on. But it's sometimes not bad, just like in companies, like you kind of talk through these issues and see how big the pain points are going to be. And I think in situations where you're dealing with prenups, where you're dealing with the separate property nature of things, it feels very cold. And when you're in the heat of the moment with somebody who's passionate and all those things, like it kind of pours a little ice water on it. But that ice water will become an absolute full blaze fire later on. And the goal is to be proactive so you don't have to get there.
Right. So we definitely should get a financial advisor on with us to talk about
Love
that. Yeah, and there's a great article I found in Forbes that was about money conversations for blended families. So we can probably drop that out there on social media somewhere. So you guys, any other thoughts on this topic? I mean, we could talk about this all day. Any other takeaways we want to give to people before we wrap up?
I would just say it's not as easy as it looks. Just because you have kids does not prepare you for being in a blended family. That's what I think. And a decent human behavior is necessary, and always make the kids first. Because I think there's nothing different in stepping as a step parent into a relationship where there's an ex. It's the same thing if somebody passed. You're taking over a different role, and you just need to be prepared for that. And this always needs to be the kids.
I'm just going to say, it's like making cookies. Stir slowly, stir thoroughly, and you don't have the lumpy cookie. And that's as dumb as I can be of an analogy, but it freaking works. Go slow.
Yeah, don't go
be
so
thorough.
fast. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Well, great. Well, if you live in Texas and you'd like to contact the Sisemore Law Firm, you can reach the firm at 817-336-4444 or visit lawyerdfw.com. You can also follow the law firm on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all over the place. You can follow Justin on LinkedIn, too, if you want to. And Andrea, you don't need to follow me. I'm really boring.
You're not boring.
I don't put much out there. So please follow us and join us again next time.